welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, then my name is Katie. I'm a full-time sketchbook artist and I use a lot of mixed media. I'm going to be doing a sketchbook tour today in my Goldline Clairefontaine mixed media sketchbook. I use this mostly for wetter mediums than my Royal Talons. I've got a whole playlist of sketchbook tours on my channel if you'd like to see more, but this one is a lot of gouache and watercolour because I find it works better in this sketchbook. So I'm really excited to share this with you. As with all my sketchbook tours, I do split it into two, so it's not quite as long. So we're going to do the first half today. I am making good headway into the last half, but for now we're going to focus on where I started. So just to talk a little bit more about the sketchbook, as I said, this is Goldline. It's a Clairefontaine brand, a mixed media art journal. The paper's 180 GSM. I have talked a little bit about this sketchbook before because you'll find that it does have a smooth and a rougher side. So it's more cold pressed on one side and then hot pressed on the other. So hopefully you can see that there. There's a little bit of tooth, and then on the other side of the pages are completely smooth. So for me, I don't find that a problem. I actually don't mind it. I do find that the pencils glide better obviously on the smoother pages, but it does depend on the pages in the book where you are as to what surface you're going to be working on. But as I said, I don't find that it's too much of a problem, and so I've really enjoyed working in this sketchbook so far. So we're going to start with this double page spread. I will try and link mediums and anything I mentioned down below, but if you have any specific questions about shade numbers or something I've used, please do ask in the comments. I'll be happy to answer. So I got this sketchbook for my birthday in 2023 and I managed to use this on our mini moon. So me and my husband had just got married and I wanted to take this with me. So I actually started this in Shropshire. So you can see here I copied out the sort of logo of the place we were staying at, which was this lovely cabin in the woods. And it was also when I first used my Kuretake Gansai Tambi paint sets, which you can see up here in the corner. I've used those a lot in this sketchbook. So when I say I've used watercolours, that is the set that I've used. And I've got a video all about that on my channel. And you'll see in the next spread where I actually filmed a video talking about them. So I really like this spread, very colourful. I'm really happy with the mood of this landscape here. This was the view just down the hill from where we were staying. I really like the combination of the pink and then the touch of sky blue, which is kind of becoming a bit of a habit for me. I feel like something isn't finished until I've added those pops in. But I really like this. This was a mix of watercolour, Neocolour, and also some brush pens. So this one is getting a little bit grubby now. You can see where it's transferred. To try and stop that in most of my sketchbooks, I do have scrap paper, which I place in between the pages, and I move them along the sketchbook rather than having them in every single page, just to try and stop it bulking. But here is where I swatched the original Kuretake palette, so it's the Art Nouveau set, but I've actually since added in a few different colours, so I'll leave a link to both those videos below. But up in the corner is the first video where I reviewed this set, and you can see all the colours in that palette here. And then I also did this painting of a little field with some sheep in, again from that same holiday. And just testing out, I think I did also use some gouache maybe here. But again, I've got the Neocolours and it was really fun doing these sheep. I'm really fond of this painting. This is a spread I haven't shared anywhere. This was actually done on a Patreon session with my friend TJ, who's Sketch It Studio. She always picks very different references than what I would normally pick, so this was a really nice way to stretch my legs. We've got an African wild dog over here and then the Namib desert here. I really like adding in some journaling and you'll see that progress throughout this sketchbook. But I just added in a bit of information and I'm really happy with the colours here. I really don't use orange very much, so it's nice to pair that with my usual greens. And again, I don't draw animals very often, so this was very different for me. Here's an example where I've got the paper in between. So I do usually try and move these on throughout, and you can see that it means the pencil that I add on will transfer to this paper rather than the art. So this was last year when I was testing out some ideas for a Christmas card, so I design new Christmas cards for my shop every year. So this was the first iteration. I was trying to blend using a lot of colours with sort of snow and show that wintry scene. But for me, this turned out a bit too spring-like. I don't think it really works, but I do like this one. I really like having the oranges and pinks and also the blues, and I do like the textures that I've added here on the ground. But this is the one that I actually went forward with, so I'll pop a picture on screen of how the final Christmas card turned out. So not dissimilar to this, I just added on a bit more glow. But I'm really happy with this. I actually added on the blackbird with collage, so this is just stuck on top, and I find that's a really nice way to test out elements. And then the rest of it is done with gouache. So I still really like this one. It feels very me with the touch of sort of woodland, but then keeping with the winter theme for my Christmas card. Two birds here. So I actually filled this one in recently because there was a blank spread. I created this as part of a collaboration with FlexiSpot, and I wanted to show me using the desk. And it was around winter time, so I wanted to paint this robin. So for the first 6 months I didn't use this very often, and then I really started to use it a lot more when I started to get my feet with watercolours. I hadn't used watercolours very often before that, so this was all quite new territory for me, but I feel like you can see when it really clicked in my mind and I really started to enjoy using them. So I think you can tell this one was slightly rushed. I'm not very happy with the shape of this bird, and I don't know that the robin was quite this plump in the reference, but I think he looks really sweet and friendly. So I do prefer this one, but I do enjoy painting birds. This was done on a Patreon live stream, so it was just a really relaxed session where I was just drawing along with my patrons and practicing birds. So I was testing out different lines. I think maybe this was part of line month, so I was trying out different mediums and seeing how that affected the final result. And this one I actually drew with an old eyeliner that had started to dry up, and this is my favourite. I really enjoyed using that medium and kind of letting go of what I expected it to be like, because I really couldn't tell when the line was going to be thick or thin. So I'm really happy with this. It feels sort of vintagey with that line work effect. So this was my favourite one of this spread. I don't like many of the others, but it was worth it for this bird. We've got a blank page here, which maybe I'll come back and fill. Usually I don't like leaving blank spaces, but I very rarely come back to refill it. And then here we've got an unfinished landscape. This was testing out using a block colour base. I used this vibrant orange as the base layer, which added a lot of warmth. And then I went on top with gouache. So this is all gouache, but it meant that when I was adding the gouache on top, it did reactivate the orange a little bit. So if you're going to do this, I recommend doing the base layer with acrylic so it doesn't reactivate. And you can see it started to muddy up some of my blues, which I think is why I didn't finish this one. But I still really like it. I really enjoy doing these waves, so I was just using white gouache for that to try and create some of this texture. So I don't often not finish things in my sketchbook, but I still like this one. Okay, and then I think from here on was when I was really starting to get to grips with watercolour and this sketchbook. So it wasn't until March earlier this year, but I was doing a month on Patreon about observational drawing and drawing from life. And this really helped me find my love for watercolours. I really enjoy drawing loads of different mediums and drawing food and drink. That was really nice, and also combining it with my journaling. So I find that gives me a really deeper connection to my sketchbook. It's something I'm always trying to find, and I found merging some of my thoughts and feelings in with my art is a really nice way to do that. So I'm really happy with this spread. I also painted some tulips, which again I really like. I've got these swatches down here just to sort of show the colours that I use. I don't necessarily use them to come back to and see what colours, but more just as an extra element to the page to add in a bit more interest, and I really like how they sit together. So this was the Kuretake watercolours and then coloured pencils on top. Another one from that month, which was observation. So there were some pegs dropped on the floor and I just decided to paint them. Again, this one didn't go on my Instagram or anything, but I really am fond of it. It's a completely different subject to what I would normally tackle, but I really like them and really trying to accept the fact that watercolours will run and that they'll take a little bit longer to dry. But I really like this, even though it is a little bit of a wild card in terms of subject. This was another drawing session with my patrons where we were drawing our own art supplies that were in front of us. Again, I really am happy with these. I like the stylisation, so I used gouache for the base and then coloured pencil on top. So quite a simple spread, and I really recommend drawing some of your art supplies if you're stuck for what to draw. It works really nicely and it's a nice way to not only document what you're using, but also draw from life. I kept meaning to come back here to add in a couple of pencils over here, but I just haven't. So this was still in March, so you can see I was really using this sketchbook a bit more. I do tend to go in phases with my sketchbooks depending on what mediums I'm into at that point. But this one was actually done with acrylic markers and Tombows. So I used a mix of those. I actually only took a pencil case filled with a few supplies with me when I went to visit my parents. So this was on Mother's Day. And whilst I was drawing this, I was just chatting to my dad and my brother, and it was really nice. I really enjoyed sort of drawing with them without, taking up their time or them having to wait for me. So it worked out really well, and it's not something I do often. Usually I know I'm going to draw, and I wouldn't normally do that at my parents', so it was nice to take my supplies with me knowing I was doing this observational month, and then drawing one of my mum's beautiful bouquets in the kitchen. So a bit of a mix in here. Actually, I must have taken the set as well, because this is definitely the green watercolours. So it's a mix of acrylic, watercolour and brush markers, and then finished with coloured pencils. I really like this. The pink isn't how pink it was, but that was the colour I took with me, so it was nice to have a bit of limitation on my supplies, and I'm really happy with how this layout works as well. Again, we've got the colour swatches, and I like the layout, how it spans both pages. Again, we're still in March here, and I was drawing some things on my desk, so I've got the 2 tins which have some pens and pencils in, and then I also drew this packet of pasta. So this was empty, and before we recycled it I wanted to draw it. So again, very different subjects for me, but I really enjoyed this month because it did push me out of my comfort zone. It was really nice to lay down the watercolour first and then add on the details, which is my usual go-to. So I try not to sketch first. I think I did a little bit for these, but I really tried to go with the watery effect of the watercolour to try and add in a lot of the lighting and the shadows and not be too precise. I think this is one of my favourite spreads in the sketchbook just because it was pushing me, and I'm really happy with the result. Again, I've added in the dates and some journaling as well. This was filmed for a tutorial on my Patreon where I was showing how to paint trees and bushes in the distance. So in this one I used only brush pens and Neocolor 2s, and in this one I used gouache and coloured pencils. And as I said, I walked through and filmed the process for my patrons, so that's available on Patreon if you're interested. It was really nice to show them how I would draw trees in the distance and do bushes and how they sort of all blend together, but you try and show the different trees by using the different tones. So that was really nice. I think I do prefer the gouache, but it was still really nice to show it in brush pens as well. And it's really a handy material to take with you if you are drawing plein air. So these were done plein air in the middle of the field, and I just took my camera with me and then I did a voiceover. So a really nice spread to fill outside, and I also like the burgundy panels that I added as well. So as I've mentioned journaling in this sketchbook already, usually it's just alongside my paintings, but for this one I wanted to try and combine them more purposefully. So I wanted to do sort of a diary page, and that's what this is on the left. So again, I've got more writing, but it's more diary-like where I'm actually saying what I did that day. I drew the tulips from the garden, I also did a colour wheel and like my car, as well as dinner, so it's really nice to just play around with that. Journaling is a hobby that I have outside of YouTube now, but it was nice to sort of combine it here, and it was something I really enjoyed, so maybe I'll do more of it. But I just used brush pens for this spread and then the dark indigo luminance pencil for the writing. This one was another spread that I filled in recently just because there was this big gap. I had planned on doing another journaling page, but I decided to just draw what was in front of me on that day, which was my journal. So I use a Hobonichi, like I said, I do that outside of YouTube. A candle, a tea, and of course a pan au chocolat. So that was really nice, and again I used my watercolours and coloured pencils on top. And I'm really fond of this, I really like the colour palette here. This one I filmed for YouTube, so I'll link that up in the cards if you want to see the process of this one. Again, I used my Kuretake Individual Watercolours, and again, a very different subject for me. I'm not sure what made me want to draw this mountain goat, but there we go. It was really nice to create the wash of colour, to build up all the texture on the fur, and then I did use gouache for the flowers on top. So it took quite a while to build up a lot of these marks for the grass, and then once I added on the yellow and the white for the flowers, I think it really came together. So I'm really happy with this one, and I really like this long landscape format too. And then lastly, we've got this spread. So you might have seen this in my video a couple of weeks ago where I was doing a week in my sketchbook, and I painted these sunflowers. So again, that video has got the process. I'll link that up in the cards if you're interested. But again, that was a bit of observational drawing practice. So I had a bouquet of flowers on my desk, and I feel like this whole sketchbook has been a love of observational drawing and merging some journaling as well, which has been really nice to see that throughout. Often my sketchbook is a bit of everything here and there, so it's nice to see those themes, and I really enjoyed creating this one. I didn't sketch this first, so it kind of came together. It doesn't necessarily look like the bouquet in terms of the flower layout, but it does in terms of how I remember it. So I really like some of these colours together, that really lovely blue with the yellow I really like. So I was trying to keep it loose, and I feel like that comes through with the bit of white spaces you can see between the flowers. But I'm really happy with this spread, and again, I think you can see my confidence with the watercolours really growing, especially from those first few spreads. So that's it for this sketchbook tour. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, I have started to feel more of this sketchbook, so I'm excited to be able to share that with you in a few months. I hope it's inspired you with your own sketchbooks and given you some ideas. I'd love to know what you think down below and if you have a favourite spread. But otherwise, I hope you have a creative week. A huge thank you to my patrons for their support in allowing me to create these videos. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do this every single week. So a big thank you to them, and thank you for watching. I will see you all next week in my new YouTube video. See you later!